All right. Are we here? Hello to the folks. I hope everybody's okay and welcome. It is Tuesday. It's 7 p.m. in London. And that means that we are here, we are clear, and we are live. Welcome indeed. Very nice to see you here. I can see that Doranov is joining us. Thank you, Doranov, for being here, and I appreciate you more than you will ever know. I'm going to wait until somebody tells me that they can hear me, and then we shall begin. So do let me know that you're alive. I've had one or two of these where I start babbling on for 20 minutes, and then suddenly I realise that the mic switched off, you know. So can you hear me? Are we coming through? Ahoy to you, Kyle. Thank you, Kyle. Ahoy to you, my friend, and welcome. Can everybody hear me okay? I really could do with a little sound check if that's okay. Thank you. I can see we've got a couple of likes. All right, sound is good. Video started with an ad. Good. Welcome to the world of capitalism in full formation. I hope the ad was good. Actually, I'll turn the ads down if I can figure out how to do that. And you can hear me. Thank you so much. All right. So, pardon me. Today's subject is going to be how AI will shape the PHP frameworks of the future. Thank you, Cal. Ahoy to you. He says loud and clear. Thank you, my friend. I do appreciate that. Perhaps we should wait a little minute until a few folks arrive, and then we'll get into this. Later on, I'm hoping that I can discuss, if I've got time, maybe we'll talk a little bit about the law of bureaucracy. And those of you who are members of the channel know what this means. In fact, you've all been exposed to all of this material and you are 50 steps ahead of everyone. Congratulations. But I think it's probably a good time to introduce people to these ideas. And in case you're wondering, this is the web development podcast where we give you information that you will not hear anywhere else. And if you're wondering, the way that these work, at least so far, is I'll normally spend about 4 or 5 days going for very long walks, contemplating the ifs and seeing what direction the wind's blowing in. And then I'll come up with some ideas, and then I'll maybe do a little bit of research, see if I can authenticate the data, and then hopefully come up with something that will be useful for you. That's pretty much the theme of this. Now, before we wait on other people to show up, there comes Mame from Ethiopia. I love your course, especially PHP. Thank you, Mame from Ethiopia, and welcome. While we wait on people to come in, I wanted to just say, ramble on actually for a little minute or two, and it's sort of a personal statement. Now, if anybody is watching this guy and you feel as if you don't really like this guy, well, I'm going to give you a whole lot more reasons not to like this guy right now, actually. Okay, first of all, and yes, I do dress nicely. I get that. But you are watching somebody who is in a very small little flat here in Glasgow. I'm not super wealthy or anything. When I turn the live stream on, I'll be lucky at the end of this if I've got 15 views. I'm wearing a bleager. A bleager, and there's not too many people who are eager for a bleager. So I'm not in any way, giving you a pretense of being super successful. Having said that, thank you for leaving comments last week. I appreciate it, every one of you. It means a lot. But in any event, there's no pretense of being super successful or anything here. Far from it, actually. But over the last 7 days, I have to tell you that I have felt a change of energy. And, if you look at the sub count, it's pretty much the same. We've had 2 GitHub stars. There hasn't been any great financial change or anything over the last 7 days. And on the face of things, it all looks kind of a bit quiet. But I have felt something. Something has happened over the last 7 days, and I'm not entirely able to put my finger on it. But it started last week when a software company, a good company, got in touch, and they left a feedback thing and says, "What do you think of our services?" And I say, "Your services are great." And they said, "How can we do things better?" And I says, "Well, it's a great service. The only thing you could do better is sponsor Trongate." And a few days later, they're on board, And then I had another software company who got in touch today, they say on their website that they've got 200,000 businesses on board. And they sent me an email saying, would I be interested in partnering up? I mean, maybe I'll show you the email. They were like, "We'll pay you," and I don't even know for sure what they want. Anyway, members of the channel, ask me and I'll show you the email perhaps tomorrow morning. And I says, "Look, I'll have a look at your stuff. If I can understand it, and if it's good, then we'll talk." So I had a look at this other thing now from another company, and I couldn't really understand it. It was something to do with load balancing, And I just looked around. It took about 5 minutes, and I thought, it's not for me. I just don't feel as if it's like most of you folks watching, you're not going around in life saying, "Oh, what am I going to do about this load balancing? Oh, if only I could handle the load balancing, I just felt as if it wasn't for me. And I got in touch and I says, "Look, thanks a lot, but it's just not for me, and I wish you the best of luck." And they got back and they're like, "Oh, really? Please tell us what we can do better," and all that. And they're trying to basically get more information out of me. Now, is that me bragging? Possibly it is. But here's the more serious side of it. I've been just coding in this room for about 4 years, and I can feel as if something is happening, and it's one of these things like I'm not even sure if I like it or not. You know what I mean? I'm not even sure if I like this feeling, and I don't even know how I can express this in a way that's meaningful. But what has occurred to me is that I have a kind of inner circle of friends and developers and stuff like that. If you know my phone number, you're part of that inner circle, right? And I have people who chat to me. I mean, we saw Doranov in the room and sees me every day at the live stream with like 1 or 2 other people. No pretense of popularity, right? And we chat and we know each other and all of that. But I've become aware of the fact that I've started to lose touch with people. And I've started to lose touch with people that I've known for decades. I've lost touch with one friend whom I've known since I was 8 years old. And I've lost touch with a couple of developer friends, 2 of them that I've known for a combined of about 40 years. And I'm going to show you, if you take a moment to look at the camera, I'm going to show you what it feels like, okay? So I know that you're coding, some of you, but just take 10 seconds and look at the camera. This is a visual representation of what I feel like, right? It feels like this. It's like that. And it's like I'm going, And I can feel it, and I don't know if I like it. I really don't know if I like it. I'm pretty happy just sitting here coding, to tell you the truth. Just before I came on, I headed to GitHub, and somebody who is super cool and really well intentioned and everything had submitted a whole bunch of issues on GitHub, and I just deleted a lot of them, you know. And I owe that person an apology or an explanation, and I'm sure he'll get one. But I suppose what I'm trying to say is that I kind of feel as if I feel a wee bit as if I'm losing you. Do you know what I mean? Now, I'll always look at the comments, and I'll always be available and very easy to get a hold of, you know, in the live stream and whatever with my 2 viewers. But the fact of the matter is, I do have trouble keeping up with emails, and it's starting to just get out of control. Just the other week, somebody got in touch, says he's a former CodeIgniter developer, he loves Trongate. And I says, great, let's meet on Skype, you know, because he had some questions. Let's meet on Skype and I'll be glad to help out. And the person who may be watching got back with an email that, from my memory, was like, okay, well, we'll see how we're doing tomorrow. I mean, I'm going to be in the office, but I could possibly wind up 2 hours later on. But if I meet you at the back of 8, then maybe if I get the team for lunch and blah, blah, blah. And I just read it and I'm like, God bless you. But I can't meet the guy, you know. It's like, I can't do it, you know. Do you know what I mean? And it's nothing that he's done wrong. If he's watching, I apologize. It's just that I feel as if I'm in this vortex, and what the guy should have said is Thursday 7 o'clock London time, Saturday 2 o'clock London time, Tuesday 9 p.m. London time, or something like that. Pick one of those dates, I'll meet you then. That would have been great, you know. But instead, it never happened. And so, what I've kind of realized is that I must be becoming a bit of a recluse in my old age. I like watches, you know, and I follow a channel called the Urban Gentry, and I like the guy. And unlike me, he is a popular YouTuber. He's got about 500,000 subs. And I like him. I don't know why. I've never met him. And he posted a video, and I said, that was a really great video. And I never sent this, but I typed the comment, I really love your channel, and I never want to meet you, ever. I never ever want to meet you, nor do I want any favours. And I had my finger in the sender. I never sent it. I deleted it. He'd probably think I was a nutcase. Or maybe he would get it. I suppose what I'm building up to is kind of maybe a request and a challenge for all of us. And the request is, would you be okay moving forward with the assumption that you'll probably never meet me, and that I'll probably never respond to any emails or anything, and this is your whack, you know? This is your whack. We've got YouTube with the comments in the chat room thing. We've got the channel members thing. And very soon we've got something else coming up within the next 7 days. So you're going to have that as well. And I'm not putting paywalls between me and other people or anything. I'm just saying that I'm really, really struggling with keeping up with emails and stuff like that. You can tell from my energy that I'm not bragging here. And it bothers me, you know. It really bothers me because there's people that I've known for decades and I'm losing touch with them. You know, even Simon, you hear me mention him all the time. I haven't had a Skype call with Simon for about a month or something, you know. So I feel bad about that. I feel as if I'm losing everybody. And I guess all I'm saying is are you okay with with this? This is it, you know. This is basically your whack, you know. And I hope that's not too disappointing for anyone. Very delusional sounding, but I hope you know what I mean. All right. How are we doing in the room? Everybody okay? We have D3 Mon here. Ahoy to you, my friend. We have Hashin Hun, 1965. Ahoy to you, my friend. Welcome, welcome. We have Ogham the Bold. I built a jewellery website once, a beautiful website for a shop called Ogham. I wonder if that's you folks. Anyway, welcome. Welcome indeed. So let's talk a wee bit about how AI is going to shape the frameworks, the PHP frameworks of the future. How's that for a detailed subject? We're zooming in like a laser beam. Not the JavaScript frameworks or some other frameworks, the PHP frameworks. So I think that for a long time, there has been a perception that the framework scene is done and finished. It's all settled. We've got our market leaders established. We've got the PSRs and everything like that. Everything's all settled down. It's a done deal. You know, we know how to do this, and we all love frameworks that are frequently rewritten. However, what I've noticed recently is that with ChatGPT, it's now very, very easy to build things like frameworks. And in fact, you've probably heard me say before, building a framework's quite easy. The difficult part is getting people to use it, you know. But over the last couple of weeks, I'd say I've seen 2 PHP frameworks that have been declared, you know, just launched a new framework. Somebody said, I just launched one, this is great, and so on. And if frameworks had a low currency before, well, now they've got a rock bottom currency. Because any person watching this, anybody watching this could make a PHP framework over the weekend and it would probably be good. And you could make a framework that prioritizes speed or security or modularity or any other thing that you're into. And trust me, it's a whole lot easier than you would think. It's not difficult, okay? And I've seen this happening. And when I see people on Twitter, and bless them all, but when they say things like, I've launched a new framework, I find myself thinking, did you really? You know, I mean, most of the code that gets added to Trongate these days is generated by ChatGPT, and then a few of us will look over it. Sometimes we'll disagree and stuff. But most of Trongate is now probably written by ChatGPT, I would say. That doesn't mean that we're blindly taking on board what it says. It's just that something like ChatGPT is very good at things like regex and filtering strings and all of that awkward stuff that us human beings don't like, you know. So that's pretty much the way things are. And, you know, I might as well go full delusional and say that as far as I can tell, Trongate is probably the last honest PHP framework. And by that, I mean the last framework that was written by a human being having thoughts and then typing. Or maybe a few human beings, you know, we have contributors, right? And I use the word honest because when I see people saying, I've built a new framework, well, call me cynical, but did you really? Anyway, let me tell you something. When I don't want to make this show about Trongate. We're going to talk about other frameworks, right? But I happen to have spent some time on a framework, right? When I started building Trongate, in the first year, I counted 17 people, some of them close friends, who responded to Trongate by saying, I really like that, so I've decided to build one as well. I counted 17 people, and some of them I could name if it makes you feel better. And some of them did their own little take on it. Derek McLean, for example, is a friend of mine, a great developer. He did a sort of version of Trongate that used all of that composer stuff and all of that command line stuff. And different people did their own takes of it. But nevertheless, I remember just feeling almost a little bit heartbroken, because it was like, man, I've been working 20 hours a day on this thing, and you show somebody it, and instead of saying, that's cool, they say, well, I'm going to do one. And it was a minor irritation. But the way that I dealt with that, which I've never spoken about, by the way, but the way that I dealt with that is I would congratulate them and I would wish them well, and I'd say, that's fantastic. And then I would switch on my computer and I would say, I'm going to build a CSS library for this framework. I'm going to build date pickers, time pickers, date range pickers, an SQL query builder, a module market, a unique updating mechanism, an API manager, kind of like Swagger, but I think I can do it even better. I'm going to build a content management system that's really beautiful with a what you see is what you get editor. Recently, one of the more recent ones I'm working on is I'm going to build a system that's like HTMX, so people can do all of this cool interaction stuff without JavaScript, right? And I could go on and on and on and on and on and on and on. And in the back of my mind, when I was building all of this stuff, there was a little demon on my shoulder, a little nasty part of me that was saying to all of those 17 developers, okay, follow that, here's a desktop app, follow that, here's whatever. I mean, I'm not going to go on a big feature hunt, but it was all a case, okay, follow that, follow that, follow that, follow that. And after about a year of doing all of this, I knew that if I kept on building all of this stuff, that people would just say, good luck, cheers. And that's exactly what happened. I've not had anybody say to me, oh, I'm building a Trongate for 3 years. So it took 1 year of building all of this stuff to deal with that, Now, why does this matter? Well, let me tell you why. Do you remember how I was saying that the value of frameworks was already low? It was already very low before ChatGPT came along. I remember people saying to me, why on earth did you build a framework? Well, now the value of any PHP framework is rock bottom. It's like, if I grab some fresh air, it's probably more valuable than a framework. It's funny, just the other day, I saw some Laravel developers were having a little chat about my work. And I didn't catch the full conversation. I don't read it anymore. I don't care. It's the age of integrity. I have changed. But I saw that Taylor Otwell, who will never mention me or my work by name, Taylor Otwell had said words to the effect of, it doesn't matter if it's 3 times faster or 10 times faster. And I think he said, what matters is if it's good. Now, at the time, I remember I responded with a smug little response. Made me feel all smug. I said, what if it's 20 times faster? Which, okay, haha. But the funny thing is, Taylor Otwell's actually 100% correct in this instance. The benchmarks don't really matter. I mean, it's a nice headline, and if you're building a framework or you're thinking of doing one, congratulations. I'm sure you can do something fantastic. It's not in doubt. And whatever a good framework is, however you define it, I believe that you have the power to build that, probably in one weekend. The challenge is, so does everybody else. So again, frameworks don't have much currency these days. That's a shame, but it's the way it goes. So the question then is, what are the frameworks of the future going to be like, given this new AI landscape, where people can sit and just sit with ChatGPT over a weekend and build this and you know, put together all sorts of cool stuff. So how is this all going to play out? Well, here's my prediction, and it's sort of more than a prediction. I think I'm right about this. The PHP landscape just now is going to change. If I was going to ask anybody in this room, and we have a few developers, write down your top 10 favorite PHP frameworks, and you would all write down, you know, CodeIgniter and of course Laravel, Symfony, Yi, Cake, all of that stuff. It would all be there. I think that that's all going to change, because the single variable that is going to determine the winners or the losers is not speed or modularity or how intelligent somebody is or anything. The single variable by which frameworks are going to live or die is ecosystem. That's the variable. I was speaking about this on yesterday's live stream at the members area. To have an ecosystem is valuable. To have, I mean, you think about the .NET scene, which is taking over the world, C# and all that. I was actually talking to, I kid you not, a .NET guy out in the street before I came up there. He's just like doing a neighbourhood. Met him, oh, how's that going? All of that stuff works because it comes with an ecosystem, you know. And there's other technologies that are doing really well. You think about the Apple gear and so on. Oh, to have an ecosystem. Now, I'm not going to babble on too much about this because I've already done too much of a long introduction. But take it from me that the winners and the losers are going to be determined by who has an ecosystem. When you look at any top 10 frameworks list today, it's very obvious to me that there's only 2 frameworks that have anything resembling an ecosystem. One of them is Laravel, and the other one is Trongate. And by the way, Trongate's ecosystem is not even finished. Do you remember I was saying that I was just building and building? Like, follow that. Yeah, here you go. See if you follow that. Here's a little slider. You can choose the time and everything. Oh, let's have one on a calendar. Double calendar. Date range pickers with sliders. Ding, ding, ding. Right? Follow that. Entirely by accident, we ended up with a sort of ecosystem. But not, and let me be very clear, not the finished product. I made a whole lot of mistakes along the way. I like the desktop app, but I underestimated how hostile people would be to the idea of downloading software. It never occurred to me. So I'm probably going to have to build something else that maybe people will like. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's not perfect. I consider all of that stuff to be kind of like the state that the Death Star was in Return of the Jedi. So I'm not saying it's perfect or anything, but at least there's the sort of foundations. Laravel, on the other hand, now I am the world's biggest Laravel critic. In fact, I don't even call it Laravel most of the time. I call it the world's most frequently rewritten PHP framework. And until somebody can prove me wrong, That's what it is. It's the world's most frequently rewritten PHP framework. I have indeed been outspoken. And although we have a few friends, we've made a few enemies. But let me tell you something. There's a few things that Laravel got right. And Laravel's greatest asset is its ecosystem. And if you look at in fact, in the next thing on Thursday, I'm going to be here Tuesday and Thursday at 7 p.m. London time. On Thursday, I'm going to come back here and together, I'm going to show you the Laravel website. And then I'm going to do a contrast, not with Trongate, forget about my stuff. We're going to do a contrast with Symfony. Now, what's interesting about this is some of you are going to be really surprised to hear this. I don't know any Laravel or any Symfony. I really don't. Last time I looked at Symfony was about 2012. Last time I looked at Laravel would have been about 2017, and I never looked at it in detail. I have an excuse. The reason is because if I see something that I like, I'm probably going to steal it, you know? So I'm doing them the favor of not looking at it. I think we have to have a choice, and I feel obligated to not look too closely. I did see a thing, I caught a slightest glimpse of, it looked like some kind of error handler or profile or something for Laravel. And I remember looking at it and thinking, man, that's brilliant. But that's it. I cannot look. I don't even want a screenshot. So you may be surprised to know that I actually very deliberately don't look at other frameworks because I think people need choice, you know. But we can look at their website, right? And we can look at the things that they get right and the things that they get wrong, and we can look at the way that the wind's blowing and so on. I may not be a Laravel or a Symfony developer, but it's very, very obvious to me what their greatest assets are. Laravel's greatest asset is its ecosystem, and we'll have a look at the website next week. And for all of the bad things I've said about Laravel, this is something that they absolutely nailed. Symfony is different. Symfony's greatest asset is its reputation. It has a reputation for being a sort of intellectuals PHP framework, you know. And who am I to mess with that? I've actually spoken to a developer friend that I really trust who's looked at it, and he tells me, yeah, it's actually a good framework. So I don't want to come in like a wrestling promoter and just badmouth everything. If somebody's doing something well, let's give it credit. But I've looked at the direction that the wind's blowing in, and from where I'm sitting, the value of frameworks is going through the floor, and the winners and the losers are going to be determined by who has an ecosystem. In fact, I'll give you a little sneak preview of what's coming up next week. You may find this interesting. Let's take a look at the Laravel site, and I'm just getting my computer ready here. Let's take a look at Laravel and Symfony, and we'll do a super quick compare and contrast, okay? Now, both of them, here's Trongate's ecosystem, which is very much not perfect, but it will be. If we look at these benchmarks here, there's Laravel. Can you see that? I hope you can see this. I hope you can hear me. Okay, here's Laravel 8 and here's Symfony. I did not do these benchmarks. I don't know how to do them. People send me them in, you know, and here they are. The last I checked, Laravel and Symfony are approximately 20 times slower than Trongate, right? Fair enough, doesn't matter. But in terms of benchmarks, they appear to be kind of similar. Maybe that's irrelevant, fine. But look at how they present themselves. This is so interesting. you go to Laravel, and immediately I'm seeing bright colors. Everybody thinks I'm going to do a demolition job on Laravel. I'm not. I'm seeing a cool name, bright colors, and I'm seeing a whole load of stuff here. I'm seeing what looks like a community, and it goes on and on and on and on. And then when we look right in the center, what does it say? Ecosystem. Ecosystem. And look at all of this stuff. I can't click into it, by the way, because again, if I see something I like, I'll copy it. So I can't go any further than this. But that's impressive. That's bloody brilliant, to be entirely honest. And it's no accident that this is right in the top and right in the center. I appreciate these things. I appreciate them. And I respect Laravel in the way that a boxer might respect his opponent. Yes, the benchmarks suck. Yes, it's the most frequently rewritten framework in all of PHP. But let's give credit where it's due. This is fantastic. Another thing I've seen with Laravel, which is also excellent, I believe it's called Laracasts. And I don't want to click a link that's sponsored. We don't do that. But when I look at this, in 2 seconds, it's very obvious to me that this is a custom-made application. This is not some out-of-the-box thing. Contrast that, by the way, with something like the CodeIgniter forums. Now, I don't have any inside information about how this was all made, but this, well, there you go, forum software by MyBB. This is third party. You can see it a mile away, you know. But this is not third party. This is custom made, and this is excellent. And this is part of Laravel's ecosystem. So, yeah, I may be Laravel's biggest critic, but when they get something right, I'm giving them credit. The other thing I'll say, just to give Laravel a real feel-good factor, by the way, Laravel don't need rewrite culture. Yes, let me talk to the Laravel people for a minute. Let me talk to the Laravel people. Look, you have the most frequently rewritten framework in all of PHP. If web development was regulated, I think there would be lawsuits, because the idea of charging somebody potentially a lot of money for, let's say, a web application, and then turning up every 6 months and saying, hey, our 6-month breakage has just happened, pay up, ding, 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 ding. That would not wash if it was a regulated industry. I've worked in regulated industries, and it's outrageous. But the good news is, since I started speaking about rewrite culture, and oh how right I was, Laravel have changed their, I call it the we've just broke your stuff schedule. And they've changed the we've just broke your stuff schedule, last I heard, from 6 months to 1 year. So now they're only breaking your stuff once every year. That's progress, and we should applaud that. By the way, isn't it funny how this guy started off the lone nutcase? I remember it well. Everybody portrayed me as if I was some kind of a nutter, because I was the only person who stood up and said, this rewrite culture is insane. It doesn't help anybody. Clients don't want it. Developers don't want it. Who actually profits from this? And oh, how right I turned out to be. You look at the commercial space for web development. What are the top technologies today? You got Python taking over the world. Last I checked, still on version 3. That was created when the band Queen were recording the album The Miracle. And Freddie Mercury was jumping about on the train doing the video for Breakthrough and everybody was looking beautiful. That's when Python was made. And then, what's the other popular technologies? C#, again, taking over the world, and it has stability. C++ is doing well also. But then you've got the YouTube scene with the influencers, you know. Now, forgive my unsavory noises, this chair's leather. I don't really watch too many web development channels these days. But as far as I can tell, the top influencers are probably channels like the Primogen, you know. Seems to be doing quite well. And if you look at what they're talking about and what they're raving about, what are they talking about? That's right, let's all say it together. They're raving about Golang and they're raving about Rust, two technologies that are still on V1. So, ever get the feeling that you've just heard another one for the Dave was right file? Oh, how right I was, because both in the commercial space and in the ridiculous YouTube space, stability wins. People want stability. And I said a while ago, I might be too late, PHP was at a fork in the road. It could have gone one of two ways. It could have stayed true to the C language heritage, and it could have gone the direction of something like Golang V1 or Python taking over the world. Do you remember the days just a few years ago when PHP was whooping Python? Well, it ain't whooping it now, because PHP was at this fork in the road, and they could have chose stability, but instead they decided to make it like Node.js. They decided, wouldn't it be a great idea if we break PHP over and over and over and over? And I don't know what version Node.js is on, version 23 or something. And by the way, Node.js has good reasons for doing that. If you're building Electron or something, well, you'd better stay on top of all of the operating systems. I get it. But PHP's different. PHP did not need to go down that road, but it did. And here we are. Now, forgive my little moment of glorification. The good news for Laravel, and I hope you're paying attention, Laravel developers, I mean, you can consider this a free consultation. The great news for Laravel actually is they've already taken a step in the right direction by getting their "we've just broke your stuff" schedule changed from 6 months to 12 months. That's excellent. And I have to tell you, I did a video called 3 Reasons Why Laravel's a Dying Framework. Maybe I'm getting old because I've started to soften my opinion on Laravel. You see, there is no reason whatsoever for Laravel to be doing that. They've already got a really cool ecosystem, and that's their biggest asset. And that's what they should be focusing on. And by the way, just on the off chance that anybody with Laravel is listening, and if you have any influence with that framework, let me leave you with one other thought. The worst thing that you can do is go halfway house. See if you just make it like, well, we've changed from 6 months to 12 months. There you go. That's halfway house. The moment Laravel joins with me, with Python and Golang and Rust and all of those other things that are taking over the planet, the moment Laravel says, you know what, we're going all in for stability, on that day, I wake up and I say, man, that's a pretty good framework. And things start to get interesting. It's all they have to do, and it's so easy for them to do it. They do not need rewrite culture. Now, we might as well, since we're here, let's contrast Laravel with Symfony. Boom. Have a look at the links on the Symfony site. We've got about Documentation, services, blog, and download. We can scroll down, by the way. Oh yeah, I'm sure, they expand, okay. And we've got other abouts, but there's no ecosystem. At least, certainly not, pardon me, certainly not to the same extent that I'm seeing with Laravel. So Symfony has a problem. And again, look, please don't be an offended Symfony developer. This is the age of integrity. I will never criticize anything without offering a solution. And I'm just saying that when I look at Symfony here, and then I look at Laravel here, the difference is night and day. This here, statistically, both of them appear to be the same in terms of benchmarks and stuff. But when I look at this, it's like, the circus is in town or something. There's all sorts of action. And when I look here, I see about documentation, services, blog, download. And here's another thing. Might as well go full consultation mode here. After all, this is what I used to do for a living. We know from the book Don't Make Me Think by Steve Krug that the first place the human eye goes is going to be top left side of the page. So let's say, okay, we've got SymfonyCon. I hope they don't do Disneyland. We'll be talking about that soon. I hope they don't go back. So all we're asking. Frameworks should not be political, by the way. We'll talk about that another day as well. But you see this, Symfony's a set of reusable PHP components. I don't know what that means. Legitimately. Now, I know that if there's a Symfony developer watching, and some of you're shouting at the screen and you're saying it's so easy and it's so clear, and you're probably right. I get that. But I'm just saying, I've used PHP. I am not the world's best PHP developer by a long shot. But I've used PHP since 2003, and I have no clue what that means. It's an astonishingly weak proposition, whatever it is. And they should think about that. Now, the next thing that I want to talk about before I wrap up here, I want to say a few words about the law of bureaucracy, because, a couple of things. I do happen to have a little private members channel, and I think it's only $4 or $5 a month, and you can come along and usually watch me code and stuff like that. And from time to time, I do these videos that I call the philosophy of DC. And in case you're like, what do you know about philosophy? Well, actually, I have a degree in philosophy. Serious statement, I do. I've never really used it, but and I enjoy putting down these wee thoughts and ideas and stuff. And usually when people hear about these types of things, they think, well, that's got nothing to do with anything. But then you go back and you say, well, actually, look at this, and people go, wow, and suddenly they get it, right? So I'm going to lay one out for you right here. And the challenge is, see if you can think about how this irrelevant thing that I'm about to tell you about could possibly affect the PHP landscape. And I'll give you 2 days to think about this. Some of you will know the answer, the regulars, but let's just give them the full lesson in all of its patronizing glory, okay? So, the law of bureaucracy. Here we go. And this is a little taste of what the members of the channel get from me now. So, I don't know too much about manual jobs. I haven't done too many. I cleaned toilets for a while in the summer, but there wasn't too many people there, and I only did it for a few months. Most of the jobs I've had have been in an office, right? And those of you who have done an office job in your life, you will be aware. I'm going to describe somebody, and every single one of you is going to say, I know who this person is. And if you don't recognize that person, it means that it's you. Okay. So here's the person I want to describe, and ask yourself if this sounds familiar. One of the things that I did a lot of time doing was building web applications for call centers, specifically in the motor trade for some reason. And one of the things that I built, as is the norm with that type of situation, is I would build these what we call overview screens, where it's basically just a big old television set that you put on the wall, and it's got readouts of all of the leads, all of the conversions, salespeople's, and how much profit they made and all of that stuff. Most call centers have stuff like that on the wall, and that was one of the things that I would build, you know. And so I spent a lot of time just looking at the sales board, and I'd be like, all right, Charlie's at the top again, that's cool. And it was always more or less the same names at the top, the same names at the bottom, and so on. And it's kind of a harsh universe, right? I have a lot of respect for telesales people, but that's their world, and they have numbers and all of that and targets. But I remember one guy, and I've met different versions of this guy, but the guy I'm thinking of, and I'm smiling because I know that one or two of them watch and they'll be like, we know who he means. But I remember one guy who was never quite at the top of the sales board. In fact, he was lucky if he made the top 5. He was okay. Don't get me wrong, he was okay. But he was never, ever the top performer. He was very well intentioned and methodical, just wasn't very competent. And I remember that guy would come into the office 10 minutes before everyone else, and he would leave 10 minutes after everyone else. This person would dress like a tailor's dummy. And by the way, that's kind of a compliment. That means he'd dress really smart. He would carry a briefcase. And when it's lunchtime, he'd open the briefcase and there would be an apple, a sandwich, and a can of Iron Brew. But he carried a briefcase, right? And I remember in the case of the car industry, which car leasing industry, it's a regulated industry, right? The Financial Conduct Authority, the FCA, which is the government body that looks over all of this type of thing, they did this big old clampdown around about 2012, and they introduced all of these rules. For example, you're not allowed to say the price of your car is $200 a month. You're not allowed to say that if you're in the car leasing business. Instead, you have to say your monthly rental will be $200 a month. You've very strictly got to use that word, right? Just an example of one of the things, you know. And I remember there was a patch, I think it was around about 2012, where approximately 200 companies got shut down because they were not complying with the regulations. Now, we could talk about that in all sorts of detail and go into the corruption and everything, but let's just stay surface level, okay? So that's what happened, and the government decided we're going to regulate this, and there you go, and blah, 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 blah. Now, when that happened, some of us were kind of like, man, this is a whole lot of extra work. For example, I remember building a little checklist with AngularJS actually, and in the call center, before the staff would sell a car, they would tick this and a thing would pop up, and they had a checklist of things that they absolutely had to say, and in the conversation they would say these things and they would tick them, like I say, AngularJS, and then they do that, and I did that, right? Most people saw this stuff as a sort of inconvenience that they had to put up with, geez, we've got to do this now, But then there was that one guy in the office who loved and continues to love the regulations. And while everybody else is like, oh man, we've got for example, to lease a car, I counted it. How's this for useless information? To buy a house in Scotland, I don't know how I learned this, but to buy a house you need, I counted it and it was 21 documents. To lease a car, you need 19. It shows you how much, rules and regulations they've got. But in any event, this one character had a different response from everyone else. Instead of being, irritated by all of the rules and regulations, this one person would come in really cheerful. And everybody'd say, how's your weekend? And he'd say, I had a great weekend. And he'd say to the boss, I built a spreadsheet with all of the regulations here, see, boss? It's a whole spreadsheet and everything. And I'm not going to keep on babbling, but you get the idea. And so this one guy would turn the regulations into his life, his thing. And then I remember the government would send in their inspector or whatever. They did it with everybody. It was just the normal thing. It's no big deal. But they'd send in the inspector to see how business is being done and to make sure everybody's calling them rentals instead of just your price, things like that, And of course, what does the boss do when the heavy is coming in? What's he going to do? He's going to say, hey, Chico, the dude who's loving all of this, who has posters of the regulations, who probably has a t-shirt saying, I love regulations. The boss is going to say, listen, we have somebody coming in tomorrow. Could you greet them, show them around the place, and maybe just show them a little bit of our system and talk to them about the regulations and how we comply with them? And of course, regulations dude is going to say, yeah. And you fast forward about 2 years, regulations guy is now driving a super hot car. He's now in charge of people. Maybe he has this whole new department and everything. I remember I built an application or kind of sub-application for the renewals team, your car's due for renewal. I spent about a month on it and I thought it was really good. And I turned up I finished the renewal system. It's really cool. And I'm like, thanks. And then I remember I went in and regulations guy is in front of a whiteboard with all these new recruits. And he's like, right, I'm going to show you how to use this renewal web software. Pay close attention. And I remember why can't I do it? I'm the guy who made it. Had a wee bit of jealousy going on, But that's the regulations guy. And there's no point in getting distressed or you know, judgmental or anything like that. That guy has obligations to his family and everything. He has to get ahead somehow. And 3 cheers for him. And some of you have met that guy. And and maybe there's gals, but in my experience, for some reason, it's mostly guys. And so the law of bureaucracy, my friends, which sounds as if it has nothing to do with web development, but it does. The law of bureaucracy is that whenever you get a pool of people who are trying to get ahead in some competitive arena, like web development, for example, there's going to be certain people in that group who lack competence, who are not particularly gifted, who are not very inspiring. They don't have any great ideas. They haven't actually built anything or done anything noteworthy. But those people, not all of them, but let's just say some of those people are in an attempt to get ahead and in an attempt to get recognition, they are going to flee to the bosom of bureaucracy. And some of you are like, are you starting to join the dots yet? Are you starting to join the dots? Because the moment you understand these little dynamics, suddenly you're like, aha, I get it. And I'll give you an example of exactly the type of thing that I'm talking about here. I always leave the best until last. So here's a little video of mine from 3 years ago, actually. I don't know if the sound's gonna work, but I want you to keep in mind the law of bureaucracy. Remember, what we're saying is, when you have a pool of people in competition and you've got certain people who really, really are desperate to get ahead, but they lack any real competence, talent, or whatever. They're never top of the sales board. They haven't really got any great ideas or anything. You're going to get people who make up for that by rushing towards bureaucracy. That's the law of bureaucracy. And I want you to keep that in mind. And I hope I can get the sound working. I want you to keep that in mind as you watch the first minute or two, and I'll have the sound all over the place at first, but keep that in mind as you watch this video. Now hold on. Are we happening? Conference. How to get ready for... Okay, do we have sound? Let's just try this again. I've just watched a conference, a PHP conference, how to get ready for PHP 8. And if you missed that conference, here's a couple of highlights.
In case you did not know, today is October 23rd, 2019. If you did not know that already, congratulations, you have already learned something. Try to be funny. I'm a German, doesn't always work that way.
What you want to do with it? He got a little pretty mouth, ain't he? That's the truth.
So what I mean by that is, today is October 23rd, 2019. Active support for PHP 7.1 ended 10 months ago. Security support for PHP 7.1 ends at the end of this year. Active support for PHP 7.2 ends in 2 months. And maybe you are beginning to see a pattern. Sorry for being repetitive, but sometimes this needs to be done to actually hammer knowledge into the heads of people. Security support for PHP 7.2 ends at the end of next year. Active support for PHP 7.3 ends at the end of next year. Security support for PHP 7.3 ends at the end of 2021. If you are not on PHP 7.2 or PHP 7.3 at the moment, you have a problem. If you do not update your stack, you are in a very deep hole that you have to dig yourself out of. In case you are in doubt about which version of PHP are currently supported, there is this really handy website. Sorry, we cannot do more than that. But sometimes this needs to be done to actually hammer knowledge into the heads of people. Hammer knowledge into the heads of people. We 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 hammer knowledge into the heads of people.
It's funny, you know, I looked at the comments here. All right, well, I hope you enjoyed that little trip into memory lane there. And I hope that this, and by the way, I'm not having a go at that particular person. I don't know about him as a person or anything like that, but I remember when that PHP conference happened, and it was 2 or 3 years ago, it struck me that there was a change in tone, and the language being used, you know, we hammer knowledge into the heads of people, and if you're not in this version, you're in a deep hole, and here's a graph of the changes we're going to make, and you can see that it's a very aggressive sort of rewrite schedule. And if you've been following what I'm saying about the law of bureaucracy, some of you are going to be having alarm bells ringing right now and saying, aha, so that's what's going on. So in the next video, and this is the age of integrity, I don't want to attack any particular person or framework or anything like that, at least not without offering a solution. But in the next video, we'll talk a little bit more about how the law of bureaucracy has poisoned some of the PHP landscape. But there is good news, and there's a whole lot of good news. And one of the things that's really good news is that the cream always rises to the top. The stuff that I've been saying since 2012, actually, I wrote about rewrite culture in 2012. I coined the phrase. When I was first saying that, I was the lone nutcase. Well, I'm not the lone nutcase anymore, because everything I'm saying here is in alignment with what's happening both in the marketplace and in the influencer space, where people are starting to value stability. So the cream will always rise to the top, and everything will be fine in the end, you know. But to wrap up the point of today's one, and I hope you'll take this on board, I think that the PHP frameworks of the future are all going to be about ecosystem. And this is one area where, even though I'm the world's biggest Laravel critic, maybe just once I have to tip my hat, because they got this absolutely spot on. So with that, I'll hang about for questions for a minute or two if anyone has them, and let's have a wee look at what you got for me. So we have Michael. I'm just going to read some of the names if that's okay, and if there's any questions or comments, I'll read them just about now. But I'm not going to read all of them. So we have GT, ahoy to you. Let me just show you my screen here, shall I? So you can see what I'm looking at. Oh, here we are. All right, so we've got the Great Doranov in full formation. We have Kyle T, pardon me, in the house. Then we've got Cal. Good to see you. We have Mame D3Mon. Nice to see you. We have Hassan Hearn, 1965. We have Ogum the Bold. What a beautiful name. Michael Levitt. Good to see you, Michael. Good to see you. Thanks for putting up with my garbage on Skype the other day. The great Doranov. And of course, D3Mon here, GT. We have, is that Lucas79? New name. Ding, 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 ding. Who says, hello, my Trongate project is not working on an Nginx server. Is there a setup guide for it to work? There's not, unfortunately, but if you get in touch with us via the help bar, maybe we if not me, somebody will help out. We have Paul Holster, another new name. Ahoy to you. We have William Buckley, another new name. Hello to you, William. Ahoy to you. William Buckley here says Laracast was a huge driver in the early and continued rise of Laravel, for better or worse. Yeah, it's kind of, you can see that. Even if you're the world's worst Laravel or biggest Laravel critic, that is for sure. Ogum the Bold says, got a book on running Fortran in Python. Interesting. And on we go. Doranov here says the components might be their ecosystem. And he might be right. But then, interestingly, Doranov says, I don't know what it means either. And Doranov knows his stuff. So, you know, we just don't get the message. There we go. William's talking a bit more about the packages in the Laravel ecosystem. I cannot look too closely at that type of thing. You'll appreciate. And on we go. I can't read them all. But if there's any particular questions or comments, just let me know around about now, and I will be glad to respond. So I work at a university. I never knew that. We hammer knowledge into the heads of people. Ogum the Bold says DWP did a £170 million rewrite. How about that? Ogum the Bold, a fellow Vanguard Gen X. Yeah, there we go. All right. So, I hope you folks got something from that. I hope... I'm looking at the screen here, and I know that it's a small crowd, but check this out. Have a look. 14 viewers and 14 likes. I really, really appreciate it, folks. It means a whole lot to me. And as long as you folks are showing up here, then I'll show up and hopefully I'll give you some information that is useful. So, thank you very much indeed for being here. And I think I've got a rough idea of what we'll be talking about next time. And before I go, actually, the Trongate website is a complete mess, and I know there's mistakes all over it, typos, broken pages and everything. I am to blame, okay? Just thought I'd mention it. All right, folks, pleasure and a privilege. Have a fantastic... Look at this. This has never happened in the history of YouTube. 15 likes and 14 viewers. Man, I'm a lucky dude. Anyway, thank you so much, folks. Have a great day or a great evening. And if you are coding, always code with an expectation of success. I'll catch you later.